Welcome to the Inspired Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea De La Cerda, and each week I'm bringing you the latest discussions and news about changes in the landscape of education and entrepreneurship. As a 22-year entrepreneur, corporate executive, business coach, and leader, I mentor a community of change-making men and women to get out of their box and step into their true calling to make the biggest impact. This podcast is all about empowering women and men navigating life's twists and turns and stepping into the fullest version of who we're meant to be. This episode is extremely important and very close to my heart. It's a topic I'm passionate about, and it is really why I do what I do. For a lot of women, money isn't at the top of the list of favorite things to discuss, but it is so important, and today we're going to dive in. We're going to talk real talk. Financial vulnerability is a reality that haunts far too many of us, especially women. And it might show up when you find out your coworker with the same title and same experience is making more than you, or maybe when you're faced with the impossible choice between staying home with your newborn or going back to work before you're ready, or maybe it's that gut check moment. Just staring at your retirement savings, asking yourself, this can't be all there is, right? We've all been there. I've been there. I remember early in my career when I learned that a male colleague with less experience had just joined the company and was earning 15% more than me. I prepared my case, showed my receipts, asked for a raise. The response? Well, he has a family to support. As if my life, my role, and my future mattered less. That moment stayed with me because economic inequality isn't just about the money. It's about personal power, options, and safety and freedom. So today we're going to go deep into the hidden forces that keep women vulnerable. But we're also going to talk about what we can do to break free, because you're not powerless. And the more we understand the system, the more equipped we are to change it. So let's start by looking at the hard facts. For women, the economic playing field isn't just uneven. It's like trying to run uphill while carrying extra weight. So let's get into it. Despite decades of progress, women still earn just 80 cents for every dollar earned by men. For Black and Latina women, that number drops to 63 and 55 cents, respectively. And before anyone jumps to conclusions, understand that it is not just about job titles, because nearly 40% of that gap can't be explained by anything other than discrimination. And here's what's particularly troubling. This isn't just about different career choices. Even when controlling for occupation, education, and experience, economists find that discrimination accounts for at least 38% of the gender wage gap. All right, we've heard this before, but what does this actually mean? It means that over $400,000 lost over the course of a career. For college-educated women, that number soars to more than $760,000. But the reality is $400,000 or $760,000, it isn't just a number. That's delayed freedom. It's security denied. That could be a home, college education for multiple children, or a secure retirement. But that is just scratching the surface, quite honestly. So let's go deeper, because it isn't just about income, it's also about wealth. Wealth, or the total value of your assets minus debts, is the resource that we can draw on when life happens, and life is going to happen. Wealth represents security. It represents opportunity. It represents a woman's personal power. I'm sure it won't come as a surprise that the income disparity leads to a staggering wealth disparity. Single women own just 32 cents for every dollar owned by a single man. But by retirement time, the average single woman has $28,000 in wealth. And for men, it's $83,000. This gap is even wider for women of color. Black women own just 2 cents for every dollar white men do. 2 cents. Take a second to let those numbers really sink in. because it reflects a pattern that keeps women financially vulnerable throughout their lives. And then there's what economists call the, quote, motherhood penalty, or what I prefer to call the caregiver penalty, because it affects any woman who steps into a caregiving role, whether for children, aging parents, or other family members. This is the time and resources that women spend every day caring for those around them. Whether it's for kids, aging parents, or both, women take on the lion's share of the work. We spend more hours a day doing unpaid work, and that time has a cost. It really adds up. Sometimes it's a missed promotion, other times it's reduced income or lost benefits. Women spend an average of almost 6 hours a day on unpaid work compared to men's 3.6 hours. That's essentially nearly a full-time job that goes completely uncompensated and unrecognized in our economic system. And this caregiving role follows women throughout their lives. By 2023, 66% of all caregivers for elderly or disabled family members were women, with the average caregiver spending 20 hours per week providing care. Hours that directly impact their ability to advance in their careers or save for their own futures. On average, mothers earn 30% less than women without children over their careers. And it isn't because we're less committed, it's because the system wasn't built to support care work or the women who do it. So regardless of the repercussions, the cost remains high. And it's so much more than we can afford as a community. So what does this all mean for women's lives? The consequences of economic inequality extend far beyond just having less money in the bank. Economic vulnerability often translates into financial dependency, which can fundamentally alter relationship dynamics and limit women's choices. Research shows that women who earn less than their partners often have reduced decision-making power within the relationship. One study found that if a woman earns less than 25% of the household income, chances are that it's the man who's seen as calling the financial shots. And this dependency can make it harder to leave unhealthy or abusive relationships, and sometimes even create a power dynamic that sets the stage for unhealthy and abusive relationships. Economic concerns are cited as the top reason that women stay in or return to abusive relationships, with 99% of abusive relationships involving financial abuse as a control tactic. 99%. I've personally seen this play out countless times with so many of my friends. One in particular, let's call her Rosa, stayed in an emotionally abusive marriage for years longer than she wanted to because she couldn't afford housing in her area. She was a stay-at-home mom for years. She hadn't worked a job in more than a decade. After her children were born, her husband actually required her to stay home for the benefit of the family. And in exchange, he promised financial security if she managed the majority of the home and child care. Ultimately, it became a trap. The cumulative effect of the pay gap, wealth gap, and caregiver penalty creates a perfect storm of financial insecurity that intensifies with age. Women are 80% more likely than men to be impoverished at age 65 and older, and by 75, this risk doubles. Women over 65 are twice as likely as men to live on incomes below the poverty line. And for women of color, these statistics are even more dire. Black women over 65 are 3 times more likely to live in poverty than white men of the same age. This isn't just about comfort. We're talking about dignity, safety, healthcare access, and basic survival. When we talk about economic vulnerability, we're talking about real women facing impossible choices: medication or food, heating or housing. And the stress doesn't just live in your mind, it lives in your body too. Yes, your finances affect your hormones, your sleep, your immune system, and more. Women under chronic financial pressure report higher levels of anxiety, depression, and chronic illness. One study showed women in the lowest income bracket had a 50% higher risk of heart disease. The body keeps the score. Your financial circumstances literally get under your skin, affecting your hormones, your immune system, your cardiovascular health. And in a cruel cycle, health problems often create additional financial burdens, pushing vulnerable women into even more precarious positions. But I want to be crystal clear about something. These disparities are not the result of individual choices or capabilities. They stem from deeply entrenched systemic barriers that continue to shape our economic landscape. Women are still overrepresented in lower wage, high demand fields like education, caregiving, admin support, while being underrepresented in leadership and high paying industries like tech and finance. Over 40% of women work in occupations where more than 3/4 of workers are female, occupations that typically offer lower wages and fewer benefits. These female-dominated fields are consistently undervalued despite their essential nature. I know I personally don't want to live in a world without teachers, healthcare support workers, and social workers. These are industries all dominated by women. Meanwhile, women remain significantly underrepresented in the highest paying fields. In STEM occupations, which consistently offer some of the highest starting salaries, women make up just 29% of the workforce. In the financial services industry, the glass ceiling is still firmly intact. Recent data shows that women hold only 30% of the top 3 tiers of management positions in finance and just 19% of C-suite roles within commercial banks. Our economic systems were largely designed by and for men, with traditional family structures in mind. And the result? Policies that systematically disadvantage women. Retirement systems also disadvantage women. Social Security benefits are calculated based on the 35 highest earning years of employment. Since women are more likely to take time out of the workforce for caregiving, they often have zeros that are averaged into their benefit calculations, resulting in lower monthly payments. This excerpt from the American Academy of Actuaries really stuck with me. It says, women tend to have more frequent breaks in employment due to childbearing, childcare, or caring for elderly parents and relatives. When they're working, women on average earn less than their male counterparts. Thus, women generally receive smaller monthly Social Security benefits based on their own earnings, histories, as compared to men. And compounding this issue, the U.S. still doesn't guarantee paid family leave. Even our tax code contains over 40 provisions that inadvertently disadvantage women through joint filing penalties or insufficient childcare credits. We're still navigating cultural scripts that tell women to be grateful, not assertive, to be agreeable, not ambitious. And we've all heard them, the micro reminders of a system that still isn't comfortable with women owning their value out loud. Have you heard things like, that's a big number? You're not worried it'll scare people off, are you? Or, wow, that's pretty bold, don't you think? Or this one, confidence is great, but you don't want to come off as aggressive. It's not just discouraging, it's costly. Underlying all these structural barriers are deeply ingrained cultural norms about gender roles that continue to shape expectations and behaviors in all of us. According to a Pew Research study, women are up to 3 times more likely than men to interrupt their careers for family reasons. While often this is framed as a choice, these decisions are made within a context of social pressure and institutional constraints. Negotiation dynamics also reflect these norms. Research consistently shows that women who negotiate assertively for higher salaries face more negative reactions than men exhibiting the same behavior. Women negotiators are perceived as demanding, while men are seen as confident. And now here's where I want to shift from problem to solution. Because while all of these barriers and all of these dire statistics that I've talked about, they are real and they're persistent, They're not insurmountable. There are concrete steps we can take as a community, both individually and collectively, to build economic resilience and reduce vulnerability. Now, I'll be honest, this next statistic is not my favorite, but it's really important to understand because it shines a light on just how much opportunity we have to grow, shift, and claim more financial power. Here it is. Studies consistently show that women, on average, score lower on financial literacy than men. One study in particular reported that women answered only 45% of personal finance questions correctly, compared to 55% for men. But let me pause here to emphasize something. This is not because we're not capable. It's because we haven't been invited into the conversation in the same way. This gap has real consequences. Women with very low financial literacy are 5 times more likely to struggle with making ends meet and 3 times more likely to be unprepared for a $2,000 emergency. And what's even more telling, only 16% of women between the ages of 40 and 65 have ever received formal financial education. It's not a failure on our part, it's simply a sign that the system hasn't prioritized giving us the tools we need yet. But here's the good news. Once we do have access to that knowledge is power, and everything can change. This means getting comfortable with concepts like investing, compound interest, tax planning, and retirement strategies. And I'm not talking about just budgeting apps and coupon clipping, although those are great. I'm talking about truly understanding how money works and how to make it work for you. Start by conducting a personal finance audit. Know exactly what you have, what you owe, and what you're worth. Knowledge eliminates vulnerability. And then ensure you have independent access to credit. Your credit score is essentially your financial passport. And building a strong, independent credit history is crucial for long-term security. Create an emergency fund that belongs solely to you. Financial advisors, they recommend having between 3 and 6 months of essential expenses saved. But even starting, that might seem overwhelming, I get that, because even starting with $1,000 in the bank can make a difference in reducing vulnerability. And every month, every tiny little bit you can move over, even if it's $10, $15, is something. And over time, it will grow. And as it grows, it gives you the confidence to know that if something happens, you are less at risk. Your career is also your greatest financial asset, if we can think about it that way. And the way you manage it, that's where your long-term security starts to really take shape. So let's talk about some strategic moves. Internal promotions, they usually come with a modest 3 to 5% raise. But depending on the market, sometimes when you change companies, you could see a larger, maybe 10 or 12% salary increase. And while loyalty is admirable, it should not come at the cost of your own personal growth. Sometimes the boldest move you can make is choosing alignment over attachment. Recognizing when it's time to stretch, step out, and take up more space in your own career story. You're not just chasing a title, you're quite literally building your own life. So build one that reflects your purpose, your value, and your vision. So now let's get into more of the tough stuff. Salary negotiation. Salary negotiation is non-negotiable. Say it with me. Salary negotiation is non-negotiable. Research shows that men are 4 times more likely to ask for a raise than women. And economist Linda Babcock from Carnegie Mellon found that women who consistently negotiate their salaries can earn, get this, $1 to $1.5 million more over their careers than those who don't. Let that sink in for a second. $1 million extra means different things for different people, but most importantly, it provides you more agency, more security, and more options. If just hearing that word negotiation makes your stomach flip a little bit, I get it. I've been there. Honestly, it could be a whole podcast episode in of its own, and maybe someday we will do that. But here's the truth. Negotiation is a skill. one you can learn, practice, and get really good at. Individual strategies, these are really essential, but they're not enough because true change, we know, requires collective action and policy reform sometimes. Support policy initiatives that reduce economic vulnerability like paid family leave, affordable child care, equal pay legislation, and retirement reforms to start. And advocate within your workplace, even though equal pay for equal work is widely a shared value. Transparency around pay equity is still lacking. As of 2023, less than 1/3 of the largest publicly traded U.S. companies reported conducting a gender pay gap analysis. Of those companies, only 14% broadly share their findings. And never underestimate the power of connection. Women with 5 or more mentors are 5 times more likely to get promoted than those without. 5 times. If mentorship is something you've been craving, but you're not sure where to start, I'd love to invite you to my mastermind program. It's a 6-month experience designed to give you one-on-one personalized support around your goals, access to an aligned high-impact community, connection to my network of experts, and monthly themes based on the 6 science-backed principles that helped me scale a 7-figure business, heal deeply, and live a life rooted in purpose. These are the exact principles that help me scale my business, protect my peace, and live a purpose-driven life. I can't wait to share them with you and for you to be part of your journey. Click the link in our show notes to learn a little bit more. And in conclusion, economic inequality, it's not just a statistic, again, although I know we've given you so many today. Truly, it's a story written in our paychecks, our households, our futures. But here's the thing. The economic vulnerability that women face, it's not inevitable. It's the result of systems and norms that were never built with us in mind. And the more we understand those forces, the more power we have to dismantle them piece by piece. Because you're not just part of the story, you're part of the rewrite. And let me be really clear. Financial freedom is not selfish. It truly is fundamental. It's what allows us to walk away from what no longer serves us, to say yes to bigger dreams, and to make choices from a place of personal power, not pressure. When women rise economically, we all rise. If today's episode resonated with you at all, I'd be so grateful if you'd follow the Inspired Podcast on your favorite streaming platform. Leave us a 5-star review. It really helps more women find this work and step into their own worth. And until next time, keep dreaming big, asking for more, and standing fully in your power. You were never meant to play small. Take care.